everyone, and welcome to Marketing and Sales Over Cocktails, the weekly podcast that helps you grow your business, improve your life, and enjoy yourself along the way. I'm your host, Allan Langer, and every week we try to bring you the best thought leaders, the best business leaders, and the best minds out there to help you succeed in business and in life. So sit back, relax, grab your pad, your pen, and your favorite beverage, and enjoy the next episode of Marketing and Sales Over Cocktails. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Marketing and Sales Over Cocktails. This is episode number 20, the big 20, and I am celebrating that milestone with probably my best guest, or maybe my most popular. I'm not sure. I've had such great guests, one after the other, but tonight is one of my personal favorites because I've been following this guy for a while on LinkedIn, and he's sort of become a little bit of a cult hero, and you'll find out why. But thank you for joining me again tonight. This is Allan Langer, your host. Before we get to my guest tonight, and I'll tell you who that is, the second couple of quick announcements. One, keep sending in your questions to the Ask Allan segment of the podcast. Just go to marketingandsalespodcast.com, go to the contact section, send me a question. If we choose your question to read on the air for my guest and for me, you will get a free autographed copy of my book. So pretty cool. We've had some great questions, and I've got one later at the end of the podcast for Dale and I to answer. So I just gave it away. His name is Dale Dupree. Dale is of LinkedIn fame, and his business is called the Sales Rebellion. So I'm going to let him talk about that a little bit, but I am really excited that he's here tonight. So without any further delay, Dale Dupree, thank you for joining me on the podcast tonight. How you doing?
Dude, I'm doing great. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. I'm in the mood to chat. So I feel like this could be one of your best or your worst podcasts, right? Because I might talk too much if you're not careful. So,
well, I don't have any hard stops. I've done some podcast interviews where they say, okay, we got to stop at 20 minutes. So I'll talk as long as what you want, and people can listen as long as they want.
I do have a surprise for you. The longest podcast ever, then.
Well, here, I have a little bit of surprise for you. So obviously you own, or your thing is the Sales Rebellion. And look what shirt I found. If you can see this.
Oh, nice, dude. Did you get it at Target or TJ Maxx?
I have a Rebel shirt. I don't even know what it means, but I wanted to wear it tonight. So there it is.
That's awesome. I love that. That's amazing.
All right, Dale. So it's called the Sales Rebellion. I know why it's called the Sales Rebellion. It's brilliant. Everyone who knows me knows my whole shtick is helping and not selling. That's the concept of my whole book. And tell us how you got there and how this all started.
Yeah, the way that I like to begin pretty much anytime I tell my story is back in 1984 when my father founded his copier firm. I was born a year later in 1985 with tone running through my veins, as they like to say. And the reason that I always mention that is two things. Number one is that copier sales is what took me through the B2B world and put me in a position of success personally and financially, and through the business acumen that I attained over time. But what it really did for me, bro, is that it gave me my greatest experience, which was to be mentored directly by my father in business. And one of the things I like to throw out there too is that people hear the Sales Rebellion and they think, well, what are you rebelling against? Or they think, here's some guy that's just trying to start a fight with, the old guard, and yeah, I mean, like maybe I am a little bit, but the point of a rebellion is that they're built on hope. And that throughout my sales career, I noticed that every single person that I was running into, especially in the B2B space, you could catch them in the office as one person, and then you could catch them later on over the weekend as somebody else. And one of the things I recognized was just like the broken side of sales quickly, and how we wear a mask from 8 to 5 in the B2B space. We continuously do things that are out of character, not of our normal nature. We adapt, because we think if I do, I will get something out of it. A sale, a commission check, right? And to me, the mindset is damning. And more so, it's because of it's so inauthentic, it disconnects us from what it is that we truly want and desire to achieve in the first place. So sorry to get super deep, but
no,
our rebellion, our rebellion is not one of violence, bro. It's one of love. It's one of empathy. We are a place for the broken. We're also a place for the lost. The guys that are up at the top, the girls that are up at the top that are kicking butt every day and taking names, but they feel lonely, right?
Yeah.
We're here for those folks. We're a community. We're a movement more than we are just a sales training and development firm. So that's the rebellion in a nutshell, man.
And you know what? It's great that you said that because, you're right. When you first see your stuff, just casually, if you see it, it is like, who is this guy, this brash guy with the sales rebellion kind of thing. But then when you look into it and you just try to understand it, it's really pretty amazing stuff. And you're really, and there's a lot of guys out there. You listed them in one of your articles. You read, some of your mentors or some of your heroes in the sales space that lead with their heart from a selling standpoint rather than from their wallet. But my book, I wrote my book before I knew about you, before I knew about all these guys. I followed the same crap sales stuff that everyone's trained, the Tom Hopkins of the world. Sorry, Tom, if you're listening, but,
What's up, Tom?
Guys, their stuff was relevant when they did it. But when I was going through everything, this is my 27th year in sales, it's like none of it worked. And it made you feel like crap as a salesperson. And one of my things is I like to help train people to not feel like a salesperson, to feel like a human being selling rather than the salesperson selling.
Yes. I have a lot of respect for a lot of the OGs of the industry and some of the greats that are out there.
Yeah.
The thing though that I do consistently fall back to is your statement, which is that it doesn't matter if there's some good ones out there. The problem is that if you talk to a human being that purchases, whether it's B2C, whether they're in the B2B space and they buy, 90% of them don't really have anything keen to say about salespeople. And right. If we don't sit back and recognize that and understand like the own raw truth that sits in front of us, we deny it every day. Like, no, like that's not true. Buyers love salespeople. Salespeople hate salespeople, right? How many times have you talked to a salesperson and you said, or they started talking about, oh my God, this realtor, he sucks at his job. She sucks at her job, just complaining about something else that they might be going through. Or you ask somebody, hey, do you ever take those scam likely calls? Or you ever pick up the phone, for an area code that's yours thinking, this could be someone I need to talk to, and it's a solicitation, right, and hang up on them? Or do you talk to them? Do you bond with them? Do you relate to them as a salesperson? And listen, anybody listening to this too that's in sales, they know when I say that, unless they're like you and I to some extent, right, they typically get aggravated by salespeople and they don't like it. And that's the problem, dude, is that perception reigns inside of the sales world. And the truth is that the buyer doesn't like what they perceive. And so they've stereotyped sales. And they look at people like the Grant Cardones of the world and, the old school dudes that are still, they have a name somehow. I don't know how, some of them, but, and they watch their stuff and they listen to their YouTube channel. And they hear their teachings and they go, this is what they're teaching salespeople to act like and how to interact with us, the buyer.
Right.
And they don't like it.
Right.
It's amazing to me to think that salespeople in general and leadership in general doesn't sit back and think about that. Like, do they think that they're the only people listening to these folks that are literally telling you how the buyer thinks? Right. That's got to be a little insane for the buyer.
It's amazing. It's mind boggling. There's so many things that, are running through my head right now, but because everything you're saying is so true, and so many people, especially in the B2B space, at high level positions don't understand it. It's all about the numbers. Sales is about the numbers. But here's something I think you'll enjoy. So the very first page of my book, and this is one of the reasons why I started writing my book, because as I was becoming more and more successful, and I was the 60% closer versus the company that wanted, all they wanted to produce are 25 to 30% closers, and they're happy. And I was wondering, why am I being successful? But one of the things I did was I started realizing, why don't people want to talk to me? People set an appointment I was in B2C. I was doing a lot of in-home sales at the time. So people set an appointment, they confirm the appointment, and then you show up and they don't want to talk to you. And I found that mind-boggling. And so I started asking people, I was in the same coffee shop every day, and I asked, over a 3-week period, I asked 277 people if they like to talk to salespeople. Just basic question. Hey, Mr. Strangers, all 277 said no. I didn't get one yet. I didn't even get a maybe. Like, sometimes everyone's emphatically said, no, I hate salespeople. And I was like, wow, that's a problem. And why is that? And was the impetus to write my book. So what you're talking about is so true.
What an awesome experiment, bro.
Right? And then when I went, I was still doing some sales in the B2C space. I was in a room with 60 reps at one point, and I started just, hey, I'm talking to a sales rep. You like talking to salespeople? Oh God, no, I hate salespeople. And these are salespeople saying the same thing. So it's really crazy. And that's the perception out there. That is the hurdle. That's the first hurdle that you got to get over. People don't want to talk to you to begin with.
Right. It's that whole thought process too of what it is. Like, do you even believe in what you're doing? Right. Do you have a mindset that when you look at your sales walk that exudes confidence and that is above the fray and that doesn't stick out like a mediocre sore thumb, but instead has a very intelligent, creative, and pleasing aesthetic to it, where somebody looks at it and says, man, I'm kind of curious about this, right? I'm kind of curious about this person's attitude and mindset and their walk, their talk, this marketing they're using, the way that they speak, their copy, if they're emailing me. But there's so many different ways to evaluate it. But the problem is that most salespeople they go online and they say, okay, all right, so my boss said this is my cadence. I got crappy training. That's typically how that works, right? Mm-hmm. And so I got to write emails. How do I write emails? And now, thank God for LinkedIn and people like Josh Braun and some of the gurus that are out there, like Keenan, that are giving good advice to the younger generations that are coming in through things like social media and trying to find an outlet for what it is that they're trying to discover for themselves. But the problem is that even when they find the gurus and the people that are good, they're still chasing the wrong thing. They're chasing this instant gratification. They're chasing this short-term concept, and they're not looking toward how do I develop a reputation? How do I build something bigger than myself? How do I do something that no one else has done in my industry, right? Mm-hmm. Instead, everybody just thinks, cool, how do I get to 65 and retire?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's, in my space, B2C was one call closing. They trained you. You sit there, you close them in one sitting. You could talk 30, 40, 50, $60,000 jobs in one sitting. And when you left, you didn't have that customer. And that's what they trained. And I led the country in referral sales for 10 years in a row because I didn't just walk out the door and leave them there. And you build a relationship, even if it is a one call close. And you're right, it's a long burn. It's a slow burn. It's a marathon. And as you build your foundation and your reputation, don't break anything.
Something fell over, bro. Something fell over.
It's just, you're right. It's not about commission. It's not about one and done and get out of there. It's about doing the right thing consistently over and over again. And you'll just, one day you'll like, wow, sales is very rewarding. That's what it can be if you do it the right way.
Yes, I agree with that wholeheartedly. It's a mindset game, man. More than anything else, it's a mindset game, and it's a belief in yourself and what you're doing. So
tell me how you went from, okay, so you did your copy, a copy salesman of all the hated salespeople in the world. You're right next to the used car salesman, from a persona standpoint. How'd you go from that to saying, enough of this? What we're being trained doesn't work. I'm going to start this rebellion concept.
I figured it out at the beginning of my career that a lot of what was taught or what the copier world adapted to was disingenuous. It was, instant win. How can I get a white buffalo? How many dials does it take to get to the center of the Tootsie Pop? I mean, it was just mediocre concepts, dude. And I came from playing in a band prior to. That was my full-time job. I was on a major record label, toured all over the United States. And so I was in a completely different position coming into B2B. And wow. I was looking at it going like, wait a second, like I have to cover my tattoos and I have to like take my piercings out and I have to cut my hair. And I started to sit back and think, it's wild how we just suddenly disconnect from ourselves inside of our sales job. Like, oh, you have to be this thing to be able to have this profession. Excuse my French, but that's bullshit. And the thing is that I watched my dad literally connect his personal life to his business walk. And thank God I had a guy like him because, he never told me I had to do those things. It was more or less the people that were influencing from the outside of, his stratosphere that were saying, no, Dale, if you want to listen, you gotta stop doing this, stop doing that. And every time I heard someone say stop, I thought, well, that's taking away from who I am. It was the first thing I thought. You're trying to create an agenda around a persona that makes you comfortable. And I don't care if you're comfortable or uncomfortable, because what has created my success is uncomfortable, is not being comfortable, right? Whatsoever. So the most discomfort that I could possibly find in my walk as a musician and an entrepreneur, I knew that it would create growth, that it would create risk, and the risk led to reward. So I said to myself, well, I love marketing. I've been doing it with my band for so long. I feel like every night I'm up on stage as a salesperson anyway. And so I'm going to play the same game from the perspective of just being Dale and take on a new brand, which was the Copier Warrior. And in the process of doing that, I realized I hit something, dude. And it was the lottery. And it was 14 years of the lottery. I'll tell you that the first 2 years I sucked. I sucked. I was not good at sales. I say that because I'm my biggest critic, just like anybody else, right? And I learned a lot, but the point being that for the most part, I was kind of focused on, well, how do I get my income back to where I want it? Just starting in a company where I'm getting paid commissions and a draw, and what do I have to do to get back to financial comfort to some capacity? And because my mindset shifted to that in the process of going to get a job, because it's cultured in us, it said like, go do something normal and, shave your beard and you'll be fine. But because in the beginning, I still did have this, I was a little bit scared, bro, right? To be vulnerable for a second. I was in fear that I'd made the wrong choice, that I was going to fail, and that I had just walked away from my dream, to do something that I was hoping would bring abundance to my life, to basically eat dirt and hate my entire walk in existence. So the process of growth in those 2 years was massive. And I slowly just fell in love with what I was doing. And I became a hopeless romantic for copy machines, straight up. I still lock eyes with them every once in a while from across the room when I see them, but the other piece of it was my dad. And so in 2010, I sat back and I just kind of said, I've been learning some kind of non-traditional sales. I started with Ed Jordan and Eric Schulman at Sandler Sales Training, which I recommend, from the perspective of the basics. But I outgrew the concept of a rigid system, take somebody through these compartments. And I knew that I needed to develop something that was more in tune with me, but that still used a lot of the basic principles of human behavior, communication, that we typically leave out, right? And getting away from the moves. And so I created the Rebellion system back then. And I created the concept of personal branding, the concept of the living pipeline, our reason theory, the sales wanderer. I did all these things way back then. And for the next 11, 12 years, I used them and I made them work. And not only did I use them and make them work for me, but then I became a VP of sales and I was teaching my teams. And that's when the light bulb went off, when I said, if I can teach people inside of my industry that have been doing this either for a long time or are very green, and they can have this kind of success, what else could I do? How far could I take this? And so the dream was born, bro. A tiny match was lit. And then I poured gasoline on it, quit my job, and started the Sales Rebellion. So
how long ago was that officially?
2019, January 1st or 4th was when I left my last organization. I launched the company March 1st of 2019.
Wow. And you're flying high right now. You just keep growing, and your stuff on LinkedIn is awesome. So
thanks, man.
Yeah, it really is. It's great stuff. And it's such a good story. And I really liked what I read. You talked about, you really resonated with a lot of salespeople. Now, I've been doing this a long, long time, but there's a lot of young people out there who are just starting, like you said. When you wrote that article about how a new salesperson starts in an organization and they're all excited and they're meeting HR and they're meeting the owner and everybody's excited and we're ready to fly high. I've got a new job. I'm going to make a lot of money in sales. And then 90 days later, you're sitting there saying, holy shit, I'm not even close to hitting my numbers. The shine is off of the statue. You really take us through that concept, and because you went from that, and obviously you were very vulnerable in this article. You talked about some rough times that you've had yourself, And then you got to where you are now, and you obviously you talked about your dad a lot. So I encourage people. What's the name of that article? Because I encourage people to read it. It's on your LinkedIn.
Yeah, it's either. I have two that are the most popular. One is the silent enemy of salespeople, or I think it's the silent enemy.
I think that's the one I read. Yeah, I think that's the one. So I highly recommend people read that, because as a salesperson, no matter what level or where you are in your growth, you're going to resonate with that.
Yeah, it's the unspoken enemy of salespeople. I don't even know my own articles. Look at that. When you write, I'll tell you what's the truth is that I write all my posts and I write them the morning of. So, but the second one that's pretty popular is leading the sales rebellion. And I talk about my legacy in there too with my father as well. Mm-hmm. But I think the two of those combined really kind of summarize my walk and help people to see why I'm doing what I'm doing. I love the idea that we can do that too, that in the year 2020, that you can be extremely transparent. And so I am. I'm vulnerable, I'm transparent, and I'm still learning a lot of things in the process of doing that, how to become a business owner. Like I'm not sitting around saying I'm the best and I'm doing it right. I'm still being taught by others. I still have my own mentors, my own coaches. And because I'm green for life, baby, no matter what, right? But of course, yeah. I think that the thing that's been most important in my walk is the ability to be able to recognize the journey you just talked about in the first place. Is that, let's just say that you're right out of college and you're going to work at a sales organization. Maybe you majored in finance or accounting or marketing, but most of the time you didn't go to college for sales. But I will say, shout out to the University of Central Florida's professional selling program. They have one of the most prestigious in the United States. And I say that because I'm biased, but also because they win accolades, collegiate awards for, debating other salespeople, basically, like by going and doing role plays and doing real world sales. It's a lot of fun, man. It's
no kidding.
It's
wow,
great. It's great. It's awesome, dude. And it's great to be able to see that kids are getting out of college, they're getting some of that experience before they have to deal with it in the real world, so that they're ready to some extent to be able to have to think on their feet and have their wits and be able to be very intentional about communication and all the things that are naturally there in regards to who we are and how the concept of human nature works, right? But that we forget as soon as we get into the sales role, because somebody says, hey, this is your product. Here's your talk track, learn it and go try it, right? Whereas at the professional selling program, you get to sit with somebody that's been doing it for years and goes, don't do that.
Don't do that.
Don't do this. Don't do this. Don't do that. So I'll say that there are people that are trying to help the next generation right now, which is awesome. But let's just say that you didn't know that existed and you walked into a sales job. And let's just say too, that you've never struggled with depression. You've never had an anxiety attack. You've never questioned, your walk in general. You will do all three of those things within those 90 days, right? And not guaranteed by any means, but it happens constantly to people, because they don't know how to vet a leader properly. They see somebody going, you want to make six figures? The salary is only $40,000, but that's because you're going to make hundreds of thousands of commissions, and they pull you in, and then 90 days in, dude, it feels like you've been shackled to a desk. That every single bit of communication is yelling, that it's deceitful to an extent, that it's like, you told me this and here's where I am, right? This concept of, how we build through perception, how it is that we want to remember the experience. And because we have no awareness, right? We're new to sales. We have no awareness of ourselves, even to some extent, right? What we're doing, of others, of our leadership, of the fact that they've been doing this for 25 years and have a completely different experience. And because most leadership sucks, and I don't mean that to say that everybody does, but most of it sucks. Yep. These people end up never coming back to sales. Like 1.7 years is the average tenure of a salesperson, like before they leave the industry.
It's crazy.
And yeah, it is crazy. And I've seen all kinds of studies on that stuff, but the internal studies are the ones I like the most. And I'll tell you right now that I represented a company and I was able to go through the amount of sales reps that had come through a branch. And dude, I'm telling you right now that in the course of like 12 years, 90% turnover in sales. And when I started to look into the salespeople, dude, none of them were selling anymore for the most part. Either that or they went to a competitor and it had already gone to another one and another one, right? Where they're just jumping ship every 2 years kind of thing. It's a crazy thought.
Isn't it mind-boggling that a company can sit there and instead of trying to fix that, Like it's expensive to onboard new people, but instead of trying to fix it and figure out why the turnover is 1.7 years, they'll just accept it. Well, we're just going to have constant turnover. So we're going to hire a talent, person who's going to come in, who's going to constantly bring in new salespeople because of the turnover rather than trying to fix the problem. They're just addressing, the symptoms. It really is. A lot of that stuff is crazy.
It drives me nuts, dude. So, and again, it leads to disappointment, and on both sides, it leads to, and sometimes it causes people to sit back and be like, man, am I even good at this leadership thing? And those are the people that are part of my tribe, right? Because I am here to tell them, like, yes, you are. There's a different way to do this, and you can feel it deep in your soul, and I'll help you. And that's one of the biggest reasons why I started this company, because I had been all the way at the top. I'd been all the way at the top, making a lot of money, and just lost and completely confused. Mm-hmm. And I was struggling with depression, my depression that I've had my whole life. But it kicked in hardcore during this time. And I'll tell you that it was the pressure of the number, the pressure of having to be the best and having to be at the top. On top of it, the constant rejection, the idea of like, oh, I am really good, but then going out into the field and being told by somebody that you're a prick and to stop calling, right? Mm-hmm. And being told to F off and someone hanging up the phone before you can get 4 words out. And having to deal with that kind of stuff day in and day out is taxing. I don't care what anybody says. You can lie all you want about grit and thick skin, and I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear that toxic crap. I don't want to hear it at all, because I got to the end, from listening to people that lacked empathy and the understanding of what somebody else was going through. I wrote a suicide note. I was ready to kill myself, and I had planned it out. It was going down, and it was not a safe place at all, right? It not even a little bit inside of the sales culture that I was surrounded by. And because of that, it just slipped from me. I felt no reason to exist anymore. I felt no reason to be waking up at 4:30 in the morning to get to work, to bust my ass, to be the best on the team, to get 0 recognition or half-assed recognition, to literally start ruining my relationship with my wife, who I've been with and I've never left, and she's never left me. Thank God for that. I'm grateful for her. And to have a family that backed me up throughout the whole process, but also to disconnect from them, from friends, from hobbies, and listen, anybody listening right now that feels like they've been in that dark place, reach out to me, because I think one of the biggest issues that I went through is that I thought nobody would understand this and that I was crazy. I felt insane. And I felt, and because of that, I started to get even more down on myself and struggling even harder and having an absolutely terrible life at that point. And I'll tell you right now, bro, my dad saved my life. He happened to be in the right place at the right time in the midst of all this. And I came clean about everything that was going on. And with my whole family, it was really tough. And it was one of the worst moments of my life, but one of the biggest jolts of growth that I ever felt over the course of the next couple of weeks, when I started to recognize and realize that I am loved and that I am good enough, and that it's okay to have a little bit of doubt every once in a while and to struggle with these things. But it's not okay to wallow in that self-pity and to sit around and say, woe is me throughout the process, because it just tears you down even further. It makes you start to tell yourself, I'm not good enough, subconsciously. You start waking up and looking at yourself in the morning and being like, I hate this person. And it sucks for sure, but it needs to be talked about more often, because salespeople tend to run from this. And I ran from it all the way until 2016 when my dad died, and I gave the eulogy at his funeral. I stood up in front of a sea of people. The max capacity of the room was like 900. There was people lined up against the walls, standing on top of each other, lined out the back door. And I just remember being broken in that moment, looking out at all these people and thinking, like my dad, the copier salesman, what was he really? What was he actually? And it was a revelation for me. And in that moment, I recognized why it's important to speak our truths, why it's important to honor our experiences, and why it's important to live for a legacy.
That, first of all, I really appreciate you saying all that. Your vulnerability is really amazing, and I appreciate it. I have people in my life who struggle with depression, and I know what it's like. And for you to come on and talk about that stuff is really brave. And I just want you to know that I appreciate you talking about that. talking about your dad. And the concept of legacy to me is something that hit me. I wish it hit me at your age. I'm a lot older than you are, but it did hit me and it changed my life. Whereas, and it came in the form of a little card. So here's a quick story I'll tell you. So I wrote my book. My book was published in 2019, very right around the time when you started your company. But I started writing it a year previous. And the reason I wrote it, I was kind of in a similar place you were. I finished 2017, and by my standards, I actually was the first time in 10 years I finished in second place from a volume standpoint. Oh my God, like it was second place and selling windows and doors. And I just was having a bad year professionally, bad year personally. And I go into this coffee shop. It's January 3rd of 2018, and this book has been in my head for years now. I started outline, I didn't do it, but back and forth. I'm at this coffee shop. First time I ever went in, it was a brand new coffee shop where I lived. And on the counter, she had this little wooden box, and they had these black cards in it. And on one side of the card was a cue, and on the back side was what she called, the woman who designed the card, a prompt. You turned the card over, and it asked you a question or made a statement that made you think about something. So here I am in this coffee shop. I reach into this box of 300 cards, and I pull one out, and I flip it over, and it says, "What would you like your legacy to be?" And talk about getting punched in the stomach right there. I got teared up. I'm like, my legacy is not this. I don't want this. And I got my coffee. I sat at the table. I called my boss, and I told him, I'm taking every morning off for the rest of the year. I'm not running any morning appointments. I'm writing my book. And he's like, what the F are you talking about? It's 30% less revenue. Oh, you can't take. I said, I'm doing it. If you don't, that's why I'm doing it. And I'm the number one rep. So he's like, all right, whatever. And he finally supported me. But 5 months later, the book was finished, and it was published 7 months after that. And my life changed after that. And that concept of what would you like your legacy to be? I train that. I tell people, think about that sentence because it's such an important thing to ask yourself.
It's a powerful thought, dude. It's a really powerful thought. I don't know that I was ever taught it directly, but it was very indirectly that I was recognizing it. My mom said on my dad's Facebook page, because he had a lot of friends, man. He was very popular. He was a servant leader. Because of that, he was an anonymous giver, and those things catch back up to you. Yeah. And what I mean by that is like people figure it out. And throughout the process of that, they recognize just how altruistic that approach is. And you become a legend. And my mom got on Facebook, and man, it broke me in half when I read it. But she said that Curtis was gone, which is my father's name, but that his legacy lived on through his children. Mm-hmm. And she said, if you ever want, a piece of him, hit up the kids. And it was intense to have that realization in that moment, and also to continue to have it on a daily basis. I spend time with my dad as much as I possibly can, even though he's gone. And I have my ways, my rituals of doing it. And every time when I go and I meet him, it's intense. It takes me completely out of my game. It challenges me. It pushes me. It makes me feel emotions that are extremely deep that most people run from, they fear, or they say are, weak, right? But I'll tell you right now that it makes me, every time that I go to that place and I reflect on it after I'm done with it, I recognize my purpose more and more and more every time. And, my battle with depression still rages on, but my dad protects me, right, on a daily basis. And people that disconnect with that side of themselves, that emotional front, are doing themselves a disservice, because it can help you to be a better father, to be a better husband, to be a better friend, to be a better brother, be a better sister, be a better wife. You can tap into that place that makes you feel weak and use it as a strength, especially because if you can sit back and recognize what we're talking about, the existence of a legacy and what it truly means, not just to you and your family, but to your community and to the people in which you've served and will serve for generations to come.
Man, it's good stuff. We're getting deep right now. So how about we lighten it up a little bit? Let's give me, I like to ask this every now and then. So give me you're in the copy machine. You were in the copy business. So give me a funny sales story, something that, pops in your head. Like, I got to tell this story, when I'm having a beer with some friends. So what do you got?
That made me famous on LinkedIn. I don't know how long you've been following my content, but back when I was still the copier warrior, I would just post stories, and the most ridiculous stories.
I didn't even know that. No, I have not. I did not follow you when you were copy warrior. So every
now and then, I head into the archive, probably once or twice a month, and I pull one out and I repost it. And I do it because back in those days, I only had 2, 3, 4,000 followers, and I'm at like 40 something odd thousand now. So I know there's people that haven't seen it, especially because in this year alone, these last 8 months, I've gained 20,000 of those followers. So,
really? Wow.
So the stories, though, were, that's what garnered my reputation around the United States and even the globe, where I started to suddenly have a little bit more like fame in the copier world. And I hate to even use that word, but I like recognition a little bit better and reputation. But I started writing articles for big organizations and publications. I started consulting with some of the larger corporations as well too. And it kickstarted me into this understanding of that I had something different, especially because of my experiences. And what's great is that for the most part, most people will read my stories and go, dude, I have almost the exact same one. Or they'll go, I believe it because I know somebody that's had almost the exact same one. So I think that's the one part about telling your truths and being vulnerable and being able to sit back and be like, this is kind of a weird story. I don't know if I should tell it. Tell it, because you're not the only one. And if you are the only one, there will still be some type of familiarity in it that other people can connect to and can say, man, that's like sort of happened to me. And I know how you feel right now. And they'll back you and they'll become your tribe over time. So I built my tribe. So I can think of 1,000 right now, right? But the sales side has tons, but I don't talk much about the service side, right? I have a couple times, but the service side is a lot of fun. And so probably one of my most epic and favorite service stories is we have a customer. This was when I was still with my father, and small business, right? So like, if it's the weekend, if it's 6 o'clock at night, like you're picking up the phone, man. And because it's not only is it an opportunity, but it's the whole reason why people do business with a mom and pop, with a small business, with Curtis Dupree, because they knew that he'd pick up and he'd help if he could. So client says, and this is something that if copier people are listening to, they're like cringe, right? And it's not this way anymore, but there was this thing called a waste toner bottle. And what it was is all the excess toner that was scraped off of the developer that had been shooting through the copy machine for days and weeks and months would go into this big bin. And when it filled up, you couldn't use the copier anymore. All you had to do was drain it. We're talking about toner here, bro. It doesn't come out of clothes, of hands, of face.
Right. It's like powder, right?
Dude, it is one of the most dangerous substances in the world, right? Like, don't recommend mainlining this stuff. It will kill you. But we got to do something, right? So the technicians, they had all gone home. One of them was like 2 beers deep kind of thing. Like, oh man, I'm sorry. I'm already 2 beers in. And so I just go, Dad, I'll try this one. I'll try this one. Show me how to do it. And so we go into the demo room. He shows me, like, you take this thing out, you do this to it. And I watch the whole thing, and I'm a totally just like arrogant kid at this point in my life. So I'm like, yeah, I got it. So I go out to the account. I walk back. There's 2 people there. They're, oh my God, thank God you're here, dude. Just so excited to see me showing up, right? I go in and I start to like clam up a little bit, like as I pop it open and I pull it out and I go, oh no, I didn't watch him to really see what he did. But in my head, I said, it can't be that hard. Like, I saw that it came out of this little tube right here. So I popped this thing out, and some of the instructions were as follows, as I recalled later on after he talked to me, which was get a garbage bag out first. Don't pull the waste toner bin out first. Get a garbage bag out first, right? Put the garbage bag over the exit of the waste toner bin and tape it so that nothing can come out or go anywhere. And he's like, trust me, you want to do this, right? Well, I just popped the sucker open and I'm like, where does it come out? And like kind of twisting it around, and I set it on a table, and it just goes poof, and it shoots toner like all over my face, all over my hair, all over my blue shirt. I mean, it was everywhere. And the customer had literally just walked out of the room and gone into another room and said, dude, this was like literally like watching Pulp Fiction when the wolf comes and cleans up. Like, that's what it was like. Bro, I'm telling you right now, I cleaned that room up faster than they could come back in. And what happened was like they come back in and they saw there was toner. Bro, you can't get it out of your shirt, right? It's all in my shirt. And I've like wet my hair at this point to like get it out of my head. And
oh my God.
And she goes, what happened? Like so concerned. And I said, oh, it kind of like got right here on me. Meanwhile, it was all over their stuff, bro. It was all, I got it all up though, except for, I remember thinking in my head, except like, I remember going, did I check that one little nook and cranny, like on the other side of it, like thinking to myself, they're going to find the toner one day and be like, wow, this guy sucks. So I got in the car and laughed my ass off. I got in the car and my dad called and said, how'd it go? And man, I mean, it's almost like he knew that it went wrong.
Yeah.
And I told him I spilt it everywhere. And at first he was kind of silent. And I said, I cleaned it all up before she could find it too. And he lost it. Just like he had this pit bull squeal of a laugh and he just started laughing his face off. But
oh my God.
But I feel like the sales stories were always good too, because imagine that kind of disaster, but doing cold calls and not necessarily like going and spilling toner everywhere, but the idea behind how hated door-to-door reps are and were, right? Yep. And that you were walking in the front door all the time. So some crazy stuff happened, including like trying to get into high security facilities and, so like going into parking lots that had a gate and like following an employee in and stuff like that. Like I was super ingenuitive, or what is the word for that? Yeah. Ingenuity, I think is what it is. Like I was a genius, bro, for sure, at getting kicked out of places and, or getting people to be like, how the hell did you get in here in the first place? Never mind, Houdini, come and just talk to me for a minute now that you're in here. It was fun. It was good times.
It is a profession that does generate quite a few wonderful stories, that's for sure, good and bad. I remember once I started my career, I was actually working in college athletics in marketing and fundraising. And the funny part about that was after 15 years, I got completely burnt out. It was a great job, it was a lot of fun. Sexy job. Everybody wanted to be in the press box or on press row and run all the basketball games and football games. But dude, you're working like 100 hours a week for the same salary. So anyway, I got burnt out. I'm having a beer with a buddy of mine one night. And I said to him, I got to get out of this profession. I don't know what to do. And he was a advertising sale. He sold advertising for AAA baseball team. That was his job. And he said, why don't you get into sales? And I said, sales? Who the hell wants to be a salesman? Kind of joking with him because he was a salesman, but I was serious. Like in my head, I'm like, I don't want to be a freaking salesman. And he looked at me, he goes, dude, you're in sales now. I'm like, I'm not in sales. He goes, don't you ask alumni for money every day? Don't you sell season ticket packages? Don't you try to get stories in newspapers? I'm like, yeah. He goes, you're in sales. He goes, if you just actually worked for a place that paid you, you'd probably kill it. And that was the first time I ever even realized I was practicing some form of sales. And then I get into the B2C space of meeting people in their homes and saying, here, you want to buy this $40,000 sunroom in 45 minutes? Crazy stuff. It really was.
Awesome.
So give me, you mentioned a couple of your trainings and some of the things that you do. For the people who are new to the Sales Rebellion and to you, give us a little nugget on something that you train that would be helpful to them.
Yeah. Well, let me just say this, that the Rebellion, we do have a process. We like to think of it more as a guideline that you can follow in your own sales walk, right? The whole purpose of what we do is not to show you some kind of system and say, do all these things exactly how we say and you'll be successful. What we do is we give good ideas, we give a guideline, and we help people to wake up their inner rebel. So we meet people where they're at. So one of the things that we constantly are encouraging rebels is to start with some of the basics. And I think that a lot of times, people listen to tips and tricks and they're tuned into this podcast thinking Dale's going to drop a bomb. And the problem is that I could drop a bomb, or you could just go to crumpledletter.com and drop your own bomb, right? And that's what we believe is we believe in giving it away. So you can download one of our best marketing pieces and sales outbound pieces for free. We give it away. There's an entire cadence that's attached to it. And a lot of people end up purchasing the whole thing, right? So, I'm no shame in my game. Obviously we're trying to get people to buy the entire package, but they don't need to if they don't want to. And we're okay with that, because what it does for the buyer and what it does for the salesperson's walk is it takes it to the next level. It starts the movement. It starts to infect change into the community, because salespeople start to look at their prospects as people instead of commission checks, right? They start to look at community differently as well too, not a territory, but a community. They start to sit back and think, man, the robotic side of me is disconnecting from some very high valuable, relationships with individuals that otherwise I would have just been transactional with, right? So, that's what we teach. And what I would tell people that are listening is to tap into that inner rebel, is to start to choose people over products, start to choose community over commission checks, start to make the change of pitching to people, but providing an experience instead, allowing them to become captivated and feel drawn toward you instead of having to try and negotiate with them. Fellowship, right? Create an atmosphere that is more communal than it is this, sword to sword or battle axe to battle axe, type war. I sat down with a buyer one time and he put a bat on the table, a baseball bat. And he said, all right, let's negotiate this. And I said, I don't know if that's a joke or not, but I'm not going to play that game. This is my price. And you had me in here to come and work with you. I have a good reputation in this community, and that's why you called me. I used a lot of the principles that we teach, which is to stand your ground and stand up for who you are and your authentic self, as long as you're not being a scummy salesperson, right? And I wasn't. I had a fair price on the table. I had a good consistency inside of my communication with this person. And he puts a bat on the table. And he wasn't joking, dude. A baseball bat. He was not joking. It's wild, dude. And I just told him, I just said, hey man, like maybe back in the 80s this worked. Yeah. But I totally was rude to him in the process, and I admit that. Because I'm faulty at times as well too throughout my whole walk. But what I will tell you happened in that moment was that I've changed something for the landscape of buyers that came after me, which was that if they were to lead altruistically and to try to build a relationship with this person, that he didn't look at it as fraud, because I didn't negotiate that price and he signed it, right? And I gave him a piece of my mind about the baseball bat. Right. And I said, what if I was one of your kids out doing this with some other buyer, and this was the experience I was having? Is that what you want to do for people? This is not what the buyer and seller should be doing in the first place. Right. Salespeople need to understand that all the little things that they're nitpicky about or that they can't stand about what the buyer does to them is cultured over time by the past. We are literally suffering from the sins of the fathers, that came before us inside of sales. We have to break the cycle. We have to stand up for ourselves, but we also have to stand up for the buyer in that process too. Right. Bro, you don't need to be putting a baseball bat down. How is that healthy for you? How is it healthy for your mindset? How is it healthy for your business, for who you are? Right? What kind of legacy is that leaving for you? That's not good. So change your attitude, salespeople. Simple as that. Change your attitude and get the crumpled letters so you can start a relationship off in a different place with the buyer instead of going through this struggle of back and forth and canceled meetings and maybe I'll sign next week. And start to create an experience that they deserve and that you deserve as well too.
And change the experience that they're expecting. Because what you're talking about is they're expecting, the sins of the father. They're expecting a terrible experience. They're expecting a selfish salesperson who's going to negotiate, who's going to beat them up, and it's not going to be a good experience. Why I say this quite often. Why do you think online selling has exploded? I mean, not only is it convenient, but I am convinced that a huge portion of it is because people don't have to talk to a salesperson.
I mean, dude, I am right there with you.
look at the car industry. People, they go online, they design their car down to the freaking knob on the radio, and they go in with a piece of paper and they say, "Here we go. This is the car I want. Don't talk to me. This is what I want." And that's simply because they don't want to talk to the salesperson from the beginning.
Yes.
So it really is. The sins of the father, you and I are we're digging out of it, but at least we're in motion, and you're leading the charge. So that's really great to hear. So, well, believe it or not, we're already at 52 minutes, and it seems like 5.
No doubt.
So tell people, you mentioned the crumpled letter. So tell people how they can find you, what they can do, what they can download for free, all that kind of stuff. Send people in the right direction.
Yeah, my dad and actually some of my mentors too, they said, well, if you ever want to be somebody, then when you Google your name, that's when and everything that pops up is relevant to you. That's when you've made it. And it was always a joke, but I made it my life goal to do it. And so you just Google Dale Dupree.
Yeah.
You can find all kinds of crazy stuff on me, from my past music career to my YouTube channel that has a ton of sales tips and just mood videos as well too. We believe in the experience as well, right? So we're not just out there doing the same old thing that every guru is doing, right? But you can find me at linkedin.com/IN/copy warrior if you like daily content, at Sales Rebellion on any social media site. And yeah, for sure, crumpledletter.com is a great place to go visit. Download the free Crumpled Letter and get your rebellion on.
Crumpledletter.com. I got to check that out myself. I did not know about that one.
It's a fun one.
That's a fun one. That's awesome. Okay. All right. So before we say goodbye, and I'm sad because I could talk to you for 2 hours here, but it is a podcast. The Ask Allan segment is up, and I have a question. So I get a bunch of questions. This is pretty cool, and I try to kind of gear them toward the actual guests that I'm having. And this one is from Elizabeth, and she is in Roxbury, Massachusetts, West Roxbury, Massachusetts. You're in Florida, right, Dale?
Yes.
Okay. So Elizabeth asks, I am a new sales rep and I am really struggling. What are some of the things or some of the, what is she right here? What are some of the programs that I can look into? Now, we kind of touched on this a little bit. Let me start with that because I'm going to kind of hand it over to you. But Elizabeth, I would say anything that has what Dale's talking about, leading from a position of empathy and something that teaches you how to put the customer first rather than your sales check first. Anything that you see like that, that is what you should gravitate toward. Anytime you see a program or something that deals with numbers, or you got to call 80 people a week because sales is a numbers game, and if you call enough people, you'll make enough sales, kind of ridiculous thinking. Run from that as fast as you can.
Yes.
That would be my advice. Now, here's the handoff to you. You can take it from here.
Yeah. I would say I love all that advice, but I would also tell Elizabeth that you are enough. And don't forget that. To remember to connect with yourself in this process. That in the beginning, that yes, there's definitely, it's not a bad idea to find some good resources, to pick up a couple books, to listen to some podcasts. But remember that you already have it deep inside of you in the first place. It's there. It's waiting to come out. To believe in that thing and that piece of what it is that's defined your walk up until this point, and to tap into it, to unleash it, right? And again, the tips and tricks, they're good, but they're not permanent. And over time, they fade. And new things will happen. You've got to start to build your sales acumen. You have to start to tap into your aptitude, the things that you're naturally good at, and then you have to start to learn the basics of the things that maybe you suck at, and to embrace that suck and say, well, I'm not good at this, but if I embrace that suck and I understand that I'm bad at these things, instead of trying to just make myself better all the time, I will start to learn how to become good in these areas. And the last thing I would say is journal, start writing things down, write all your experiences down,
Yes.
Be your own best teacher throughout the process. That was one of the things that my dad encouraged with me. He said, I can tell you all the tips and tricks and all the different ways to do this stuff, but the best way that you're going to learn is to go and fall flat on your face and learn how to pick yourself up. But know that I'm always there, standing beside you, ready to help you up if you have trouble getting back up. So you have a community around you, Elizabeth. There's people that care for you, whether it's family members, whether it's colleagues, whether it's people like me and Allan. There's a lot of people that have your back out there. Tap into communities, build some kind of accountability for yourself through the connections that you do have, and start to tap into that inner rebel.
And to tag onto that, find your tribe. LinkedIn right now, I mean, I wish I had LinkedIn. You started it when you were the copier warrior. But really, LinkedIn is such an unbelievable resource. I think a lot of young people don't realize how powerful it can be. You find your tribe, you find that group that supports you, and even the organization. Don't just take a job to take a job. Find an organization that you can thrive in, that you feel comfortable working in. Because if you don't like where you work, if you don't like the way they're doing things, and they're making you not you, if they're turning you into someone that you're not, that's not the right place. So there's a lot of things, Elizabeth. That's a great question. I think it's helpful to ask that, and kudos to you to try to, find out how to fix it and to send in this question. So you are definitely, I'm going to send Elizabeth 2 books. How's that? She can give it to one of her friends.
You said she was in Mass? She's
in West Roxbury, Massachusetts. Yep.
Yeah. Elizabeth, connect with Jack Wilson. He's the rebel son. He's closer to Boston, but maybe outside of it. And I'm just
West Roxbury is 15 minutes outside of Boston. Not even. It's not that far. Yeah.
Yeah. She's got alliances right in her backyard that she can connect with, and just mention that Dale Dupree said, go get connected with Jack Wilson. He's a great guy, and he'll help align you with a lot of the things that you're trying to find your sales block. He's a great mentor too. So
awesome. Jack Wilson. Well, I'm going to check him out myself as well.
You should. He's a great dude.
I will do. Is he a good podcast guest? Maybe I'll have him on for my.
Oh, dude. Yeah. He'll blow me out of the water, man. So give it like 10 episodes so people forget that I was on.
Spread him out a little bit.
Yeah.
All right, Dale. Well, this has been unbelievably amazing. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you joining us and joining me on the podcast. It's been great. Any parting words for anyone out there that you haven't said already?
Yeah, dude, it's an honor to be on the show. I appreciate you reaching out to me and allowing me to come on and taking time out of your day. I think that time is the most important thing that we can give to one another. And so I would tell people that are listening right now, if there's anything that you heard me say tonight that I imparted into you, is this: time is the currency of sales, and attention is the exchange.
Ooh. And on that note, we are going to say goodbye. So, Dale, thank you very much, sir. And this has been Marketing and Sales Over Cocktails. Allan Langer as your host. Visit marketingandsalespodcast.com. Go to the contact section. Send me a question like Elizabeth did tonight. They are always great. We always get some great answers. And go on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, leave a review. I love what I'm hearing from everyone. Seems like the podcast is really catching on. So thank you all for listening. Dale, thank you again. And everyone, we will see you next time.